I'm Shar Banerjee, and this is Books That Built Me. I'm an ex-executive turned to leadership coach specializing in people managers. My job is to get people out of their manager headspace and into their leadership growth space. I typically work with clients to build leadership DNA and self-leadership muscles in group programs or one-to-one coaching. But on this show, we're going to dive deep into the stories of other leaders. And it all starts with a book that they believe has fueled their passion, influenced their decisions, and turned book lessons into life lessons. Welcome to Books That Built Me. Today, I'm in conversation with Chrissy Heyne, and in today's episode, we're discussing Chatter by Ethan Kross, the voice in our head, why it matters, and how to harness it. I'm so glad you could join us. Here we go. I have been devouring this book. Okay, so let's get into it. Chatter by Ethan Kross. An excellent book. I bought it because you said this was the one. And then I got super excited when I was reading the back because I'm like, wait, there's Angela Duckworth saying something great, Susan Cain, Adam Grant, Carol Dweck. These are the people I love. Daniel Pink. I'm like, I love that. If they love this, I'm going to love this too.
I know.
And then I read the first and second chapter, Chrissy, and I was like, what's happening? Like,
I know.
It's a little bit dry.
Oh God, I gotta remember.
No, the first two chapters is like the science of it all, like breaking down the history and the science. And I just was like, where's the practical stuff? Like, I want to learn, you know? And then when I got to chapter 3, I was like, just shut up. And, like, that's it. Like, chapter 3 alone was worth this entire book. And then there's chapter 4 and chapter 5 and chapter 6 and chapter 7. Like, phenomenal book.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad you're into it. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. So let's kick it off with you, Chrissy. Like, what of the entire book? Like, we don't have to go from chapter to chapter, but for you, what was something that was so impactful that you have converted that and translated that into your own world, and you use that daily, weekly, or it's a ritual now for you?
Okay. Before I get to that, I do want to, like, the first thing that got me into why I would do it is some of the facts that might have been in the chapters that were dry to you, but this idea of just most of us spend like a third to a half of our life not present in the current moment. When I read that, I was like, okay, I see myself in that. All of us want to be like, hopefully we're closer to a third, but like shit's coming at us so fast, and like we're doing the best we can. And so then this question of like, well, when you're not present, where do you go? Okay, well then you're up in your mind. And then the rate at which we talk to ourselves, it's like we say like 4,000 words to ourselves in a minute. And the State of the Union, which is like roughly an hour, has 6,000 words. And that we believe ourselves, right? So like that, and he lays those facts out in a really, to me, like cool way. And because I coach people, I get a windows into, I know that's true for other people. I live in my own head. I know that's true for me. So like that whole premise of like, we're not present. Meanwhile, we're talking to ourselves. We're either probably often inner critic or ruminating, which is then co-opting our central nervous system and preventing us from doing like executive functioning, preventing us from accessing our wisdom, preventing us from innovating, from taking action, from empathy. Like we can't do those two things at the same time. So I was already like, okay, I see myself in this. And the thing that has like profoundly changed my life, and I have this from the original time I wrote these notes to myself, not like, he said, our mind is the lens and our inner voice is the button that zooms us in or out of our experience.
I have that highlighted.
You do?
100%.
Yeah.
Because it's so visual. It helps you like get it right away.
Yes. And so then it's like, when we are hitting that zoom in button, we are, and let's say we're ruminating. Let's just take that as an example, because I think most people can have experienced that to some 100%. Degree.
Yeah.
We are almost overly immersed in the experience, which then causes us stress, right? So once we zoom in and in, I'm a shitty mom. Why did I have kids? I'm going to ruin them forever. I messed up that, you're just like going down that rabbit hole. That the number one strategy is distancing. And that there's a variety of strategies to distance from that. And that's profoundly those are the things that I took away from this book and that I offer to others when I'm coaching around like, okay, hold on. We are like really zoomed in. We've got the zoom in button, hardcore. So let's try to create some distance. And I find that to be profoundly helpful.
I love that. And for me, so they call it psychological distancing.
Yes.
And for me, I totally agree that that entire section on, first of all, explaining what psychological distancing is, and then giving all of these practical tools in which you can do that. I thought that was transformative. So I just want to pull that section out because let's actually dive there. For me, when he talked about the two things that you can do in eliminating chatter, which by the way, maybe for the audience who's not read this book, maybe we can define chatter. Like I think intuitively, most people can kind of clue in on what chatter is, but essentially it's anxiety having a voice in your brain. On and on and on and on and on it goes, right? Like down the...
And you know, if you've ever tried meditating, it's very, very clear to hear that's coming. And it's not even sometimes, it's just like, what's for dinner? Don't forget to pick the kids up. I got to mail this letter. It's those. And then it's all the way to like, I screw that up. I'm never going to be successful. I'm trapped, you know? The range of it is, but it is that dialogue that we're constantly having with ourselves.
And you know what? He does a great job of talking about meditation because he explains that meditation or mindfulness is watching those thoughts without engagement. He says, don't engage with it. You're watching the thoughts float on by. Versus the point of psychological distance is it's not about watching them. You are engaging your thoughts, but you're engaging your thoughts from a distance.
He says we can use our thoughts to change our thoughts by adding distance. And he talks about like Advil brings a fever down and distancing brings the immersion, the zoom in button. It allows you to zoom out. It brings that chatter down.
I love how you pick up the metaphors.
I know. They stick.
They resonate, right? They totally stick. 100%. Okay. So for me, I love that he talks about being a distancer versus being an immerser. So for, to get started in this concept of distancing yourself from your chatter, he says the group of people who dance with chatter, who immerse themselves in chatter are called immersers versus practicing on being a distancer, which is when you zoom out for perspective, but then you also zoom out for wisdom, which I love that he gave wisdom a definition. Like there are 4 particular categories for wisdom. And so I don't know about you, but he's given like a bunch of techniques, and some of the ones that he's talked about is like, let's say that you are giving advice to a friend. Like this is not happening to you, but it's happening to a friend. What would you say to them? Or imagine that you are experiencing this, but you step out of your own body and watch yourself. Like he has a thing called being a fly on a wall. Like you're just watching. Right? Like you've zoomed out, like you've flown on by on the ceiling and you're just watching. And then the third other technique that he says is to journal, to journal about something, but then just like create some distance as though you're writing a story about somebody else who's experienced this thing.
And all of it it just zooms you out. And I think he does a really cool job, like with little studies with like, oh, when immersers did this, the stress level, when distancers did this, they were more confident. They were more, neutral. And then what about the temporal distancing? The like, how might you feel about this in 5 years?
Oh yes, with time. Yes, I haven't even gotten to the time. He's like, first of all, there's time from the past, which is when you look at your past and then you create a story from that. And that feeds into your psyche. And then the future, which is when you're like, let's imagine 10 years from now or 5 years from now or whatever, but yes, with the time element, you're right. There's a couple more techniques there.
I that one I like, particularly when I'm on the more upset side of the feelings wheel. So like interpersonal or one of the kids, I'm just like, it's like, Chrissy, is this missing cleat in 2 years? You know what I mean? Like, are you going to care as much? And it's just like, and it doesn't make the problem go away. And he's really clear about that. Like distancing, once the problem is still the problem or the whatever is causing you the distress, but you've got more access to wisdom to think through the problem with the part
Yeah.
of you, with your most kind of regulated self.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if you did that intentionally because we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
But you just talk to yourself in the third person.
I did.
Ah.
That's another one I really like. Yeah.
I love that
What did
one.
I say? What did I do? I didn't even catch it.
You were talking to, you said, Chrissy, is this the thing that you're going to remember in, whatever?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So for
Using
our
your name.
listeners,
Yeah, go ahead.
That's the next section where he says that you can create psychological distance by literally calling your name out.
Yeah. Yeah.
To say, Shar, is this important right now? Or when you're journaling, to use your pronouns, as if to say, she did that, and then he went there, and it's all about you. But you're creating a distance between the you that was in the story versus the you that is remembering the story.
Exactly. And it's literally the difference between saying like I and me and my versus Chrissy and she and her. So,
yes.
And I know it sounds kind of weird.
Yeah.
But one, when I read this, I was like, oh, I do this.
Oh, me too.
I do
me too.
This.
I was like, thank God this is a thing. I'm not a weirdo.
Yes. Like, Chrissy, it's time to go up to your office and get some shit done. You're down here like, what am I going to do today? I've got so much to do. I'm never going to get it all done. It's like, Chrissy, what's one thing you can go upstairs and get done right now? Yeah. And it does move you out of, right? Because if we go back to that original problem, which is a half or the third of the time we're not present in the current moment. So if I'm walking around my house stressed about all I have to do and not doing it, I'm literally just not here. Right now I could be doing some things, but I can't do it while all that verbal assault is happening inside my head. I literally can't access executive functioning.
Thank you for bringing it back to the first two chapters, because I was the first one to say, I don't know. Thank you for bringing it back, because you're right. The why is so important. And I was so ready for the tactics and the strategy and give me all the tools. No.
I need to know the why, because then it invests me in what I have to do. And if I can't phone that part in, even being invested in the why, I'm still struggling. Like, I don't want to move on, but meditation and mindfulness, I'm on like 67 days straight. This has been a thing I've been trying to cycle through. And the practice of even noticing that you have thoughts and that you can't control what thoughts come up. We don't actually have control. It's just like right now, why am I thinking about the drive I have to make in an hour? I don't know. But I have some agency in being like, I'm going to let you float by, or I'm going to put you down. If I'm stressed about my sons, I'm going to put that thought down. I can pick it up again later. But right now I'm putting it down, and that I'm actually in the driver's seat in that sense. And that is a practice, not a skill.
Yes.
You don't just figure that out and it's done.
Yes.
And that's why you meditate, is to take 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever a day to practice, and mindfulness, to practice letting your thoughts come and go.
Yeah. I
have found that to be life-changing as well.
Yeah. And for any listener who has not yet read the book, I think he does a phenomenal job of defining what is distraction versus what is mindfulness versus what is psychological distancing, not physical distancing, psychological distancing. Because a lot of people engage in distraction, for example.
Right.
This is bothering me.
Yeah.
100%. The other day I was waiting for a test result, and it was great. I went and I went to the gas station and I paid the money and I cleaned every nook and cranny of my car.
It's bad when you're going to that task. You're like, anything but.
But listen, what?
No, I know.
Knew what I was doing because of this book. It gave me the language to understand. And I did try to psychologically distance myself, but it just wasn't working. And so I was like, I am too bothered to do a mindfulness exercise, and I want to distract myself.
Yep.
And so the power of choice in having the language is what I so appreciate about books like this.
Yes.
And you can trust it because the man quotes like a million studies.
I know, but so I love how it's so quick. It's so quick. Yes, it's not heady. It's like a story, because he also kind of tracks his own journey, which I really love him for.
That, yeah.
I know. I'm like, and so it's like the perfect mix of like info and story for me. Yeah. But to your point about that, go ahead.
He cited 157 things, like, in his little note section. It's 157 items.
Wow.
Like, he is thorough.
Wow. Yeah. I just really like, at the end of, I've just started this year, at the end of every coaching engagement, I send the client a book that kind of gets at the core of what a lot of the work that we did in the session is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've sent this to like 3 people this week alone because
Yeah.
that's what it is. I mean, one of the things he says in the early chapters is like, we talk to ourselves and we listen.
Mm-hmm.
And until you can see, right? Like if I'm talking to someone who wants to change their job, but a big part of their inner critic is around imposter syndrome, feeling like they'll never get a job, feeling like no one will hire them, feeling like they're, then they're going to not take action because they're listening to their thoughts. And there might be other thoughts that they can't access because they're so zoomed in to that thought, right? Our attention zooms us in. The mind is the lens. Our attention is the zoom in and out button. And so if they're so zoomed in on that, then of course it feels like there's no options.
Yeah.
And so part of the work, I think in coaching or with self, and you can do this with yourself, is to have that observer's mind of, well, of course, if I'm zoomed in there, I can't even see any possibility. And there might be some.
Yeah. And I love that you're sharing this book because he talks about that a lot. As this book is actually, what does he say? This book was born out of a question that a student asked him in a classroom, which is to say, why are we studying about this now? Like, why aren't people teaching us when we're younger? In elementary school. And so,
like,
and then.
Yeah, maybe could we have skipped the square dancing unit and like maybe. Yeah, I know.
But that's his motivation. And so he's now working with schools and he's created something called a toolkit. I forget the exact, it's like toolbox or toolkit. And that's how he wrote this book.
Yeah.
And so I love that you're sharing this because it's true. Like the science backs up the tactics.
Well, and
the tactics are real.
Yeah. And it's really hard, to tell your friend or your partner or your sister or your kid, hey, I think your thoughts might be dictating your reality. They don't, it doesn't seem true, right? Because your thoughts seem true. I mean, there is a study that he references, and this is another part of my why, where he says, our thoughts have a profound impact on our well-being. There was this 2010 study, I'll skip the details, but that proved our inner experiences dwarf our outer experiences. What you think about is a better predictor of your happiness than what you're actually doing.
Isn't that so crazy?
It's mind-blowing when you realize that most of your reality is actually inside.
Is that so crazy?
It's like terrifying and exciting to me. You know what I mean?
Totally. There's a part of it that's like so fearful, but then it's like, wait a minute. This is magic too.
Yes. Yes. And you know what proves it to me is he talks about how it works for positive emotion too. So some people do distancing around joy and pride. Yes. Oh, I got this job, but it's not that big of a deal.
Whatever. Yeah.
Then you just minimized your own experience of joy. You can actually minimize the positive experiences too by being like, well,
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, if you can do it that way. And you see people like that all the time where they're like, wasn't good enough. And you're like, it was incredible. Yeah.
Oh, I love that you brought that back because he kind of just slits, just kind of like put that in there, but then moved on. Yes. But thank you for bringing that to the forefront here because 100%, there are types of people who shy away from their own celebration. We don't celebrate nearly as much as we ought to.
Yeah.
And that costs us. There's a cost to that.
You are distancing yourself from the positive emotion. That is an internal thing.
Yeah.
The experience was amazing. You have evidence that it was amazing, but you're taking yourself out of the equation. So you're using the technique, but on the wrong thing.
On the wrong thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's why I think this book is profound because it might be hard to detect in yourself because it's almost like the mirror's
so
too
hard.
close.
Yep.
But when you start to hear how people talk or your friends or your, whoever, you're like, oh, I think our thoughts do play a role. And if that's true for them, it's might also be true for me.
For me too.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So there is another section of this book that I feel really like kind of blew me away. I don't know if you had the
Okay.
same feeling about
Tell
it, but
me.
it was the section on placebo and rituals. Do you remember that part?
Tell me the page. But when you just said placebo, I was like,
Oh,
yes.
it's like the end of the book around
Okay.
page 129. So he
Okay.
talks about placebo and how it works because we expect it to work. So
Yeah.
without expectation,
Right.
a placebo is just whatever.
Yes.
And it's very interesting because I was recently listening to Seth Godin talk about the power of placebo. Like it's
Yeah.
not a negative thing.
Yeah. Right.
Like it truly is this incredible life hack
Right.
that we can all tap into.
Right.
Um,
It says, within
yeah,
the human mind, the people simply expecting to feel a certain way
yeah,
can produce a positive outcome.
yeah. And I love that the man's like, hold on, but a placebo works because you don't know it's working. And then he's like, well, let's test it.
Yeah.
So they educate, like in this experiment, they educate people on what a placebo is, and then
Yeah.
they tell him, listen,
Yeah.
you're taking a sugar pill, and you just have to believe it's
great.
gonna work, and it works.
Yeah. Our minds are sometimes as powerful as modern medicine. And
Yeah, I love that.
I am
love that
someone
line.
like I already know myself. I'm like 100%. I am someone who could take a sugar pill and be like, honestly, I've never felt better. Like I know that like I am one sugar pill away from like, and I think it's just because I kind of skew that way.
Yeah.
Of where I do like to attach to good feelings. Like I would much rather I over dial there, but yeah, it and it goes back to that the inner experience is more powerful than the outer experience. Like I think
I'm the opposite. Like I'm like, I believe in medicine. I need the rational, experimental cause and outcome, and therefore I believe. But I loved this because even though you know it's not going to work, even though medically it doesn't work, teaching people the power of placebo and then telling them, listen, it'll only work if you believe it'll work. That works.
I know. Well, you can actually tell them that it's a placebo.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like you're literally like, hey, it's a placebo. It's not medicine, and people are like, sweet. I'm actually as good as the person who received medicine.
Yeah, I know.
I have to also preface this to say that he was very clear that this was extremely relevant for psychological outcomes as opposed to like physical outcomes.
Yes, that
right?
is
So
important. Yeah.
Which also talks to the point that you had about it's all here. It's all our inner dialogue. It's all the stories that we're telling ourselves.
Yeah. And that all of those patterns of thinking, and I do think it's helpful to use that language. If you're in a 2 or 3rd or 4th or 5th decade of life, then you've been thinking a certain way, and there is a real neural pathway groove, which the threat there is that you don't actually think it's an inner experience, that you think that is true, and you have to sort of release your grip on the idea that if you can get some distance or use another strategy in this book, that there might be other thoughts available to you and other ways of seeing things and other ways of being and other ways of talking to yourself that would give you access to different wisdom than you've had before. But there's a letting go. And there's 100%. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? It's like, are you ready to try a new way of thinking, which is really a new way of being? And are you open to the idea that part of your internal reality has to do with the way that you're driving the bus, not with where you live, how much money you make, how much, like all those other things that we think are 100% responsible for impacting our experience, when actually we're a big piece of the pie.
It's very true. And I think it's almost like self-selection. The person who goes out to buy this book is somebody who is invested in self-work. And somebody who's invested in self-work understands that there is a concept of letting go.
Yeah, true.
To the way that you were or the things that you held on to in order to adopt a different lens, perspective.
Yeah, you're right.
Way of act. So there is a form of self-selection. I was one of those people who've I have a million self-help books.
Yeah, same.
And it's like, it's not the thing that you talk about because it's relatively uncool. But this is amazing.
Yeah, I know. I'm so glad you liked it.
For all of the people who are in our camp who are like, I want to understand me more, how
Yeah.
this tool works and how
Yeah.
it connects to this, and my advocacy and what I do and who I am in the world.
Yeah.
More power to you.
Yeah. I think it's really useful. I think everybody can see themselves in it. You can see
Yeah.
others in it, which gives
Yeah.
you some empathy,
Yeah.
of just, again, we're all doing the best we can. We're
Yeah.
all trying to be good. We all have some gross
Yeah.
parts of us. Those show up too,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and there's ways forward. And I think this one gives some really, I was kind of worried that it would only be about the chatter and not strategies. And I was really
Right.
pleased. Like, I was like, this gets very concrete,
For sure.
you
I was
know?
a bit worried about that too. Reading the title, I thought, well, is my chatter going to chatter up? Like,
Yeah.
I need her to chatter down.
Yeah. 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 And it's everywhere. I mean, we were joking
Yeah.
before you hit record of like, the chatter I had before this, there was a part of my chatter that was like super excited to see you. So happy to talk about this book, really excited to be on a podcast. And then there was parts of my inner talk that was like, Chrissy, you forget stuff all the time. Chrissy, you talk too fast. Chrissy, don't interrupt Shar. Chrissy, remember what, like, you like, be clear, so in it, and so then I took 2 minutes and I did a little mindfulness practice and I just created Chrissy. You're right. I use the self name a lot where I'm like, Chrissy, you're going to have fun. Go in and be yourself. Nothing's perfect, but it'll be good enough and you'll be excited to talk about it. So like it shows up in almost everything you do. And that's why that like 4,000 words a minute, we can be having a conversation and I can be having chatter.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah. 100%. I have tried so hard in this interaction to stay right here.
Yeah.
I have, but it takes effort.
And you have to reset and reset.
Constantly.
And reset. Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
But
Same.
it's worth it because this present is just so fun.
Yeah.
To be at this level is just so,
I agree.
So
I totally agree. Yeah. I love it.
And I will also say there's a part of it that's self-work, but I really love this part of the book that he talks about creating a chatter board of directors and a group of chatter advisors, which really for me speaks to the fact that he wants this to work for everybody.
Yeah.
He knows that you cannot do it on your own.
Yeah. Can you say more about because I've read it, it's been like a year. So you read it more recently. What is that like?
It's
actual? Yeah.
There's basically this thing where he talks about that there's power. So as humans, we want to share all of our negative thoughts and emotions. And when something bad happens to us, we have this innate desire, regardless of where you are culturally or gender or any of those things, we have a human tendency to want to share the negative. And the power in that is we're feeding our emotional need.
Yeah.
Right. Because we all have this basic need to belong, which breaks down into an emotional need. But there's also a cognitive need that we have that most people, whilst they're sharing that inner angst, your good friend will ask questions back. And then you relive it and then they get into it and then you get into it. And he calls that co-rumination.
Yes.
And he's like, yo, that is not powerful. Right? Because that's just a sinking ship.
Yeah.
And he talks about instead, pay attention to your friends who give you that support, that emotional support, but then also bring wisdom into the conversation and they bring perspective and they challenge you to change the way that you think about this stuff.
Yeah.
So he talks about how to be that friend. And then for you, go out there and find that board of directors. Or find that, what does he call it? The advisor team.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can be successful when you have that group that is all about supporting you, that nourishes your soul through that emotional connection, but then can also challenge you without getting into that co-rumination, just like pitfall.
Yeah. I love that because it's like the common humanity of it too.
Yeah.
We all do that and you want someone who can help pull you out, you know? And then if you've named that as a group, then you almost can have the permission, like, Shar, do you want me to do some should we try a distancing? Like, are you open to distancing?
Yeah.
Are you opening to try to distancing to zooming out? Yeah. If you can find friends like that.
I will say I have some of those friends, and the way in which I tell them without using the same language, because maybe they haven't read the same book, is I expressly say, I am so grateful for your friendship because not only do you support me, but you challenge me. And I value that challenge.
Yeah. Help me
right.
see
And
things
so
differently.
I feel like those words really help sort of bring it into perspective. And then it gives them permission to continue doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because it may seem kind to say, oh, poor you. I'll talk more about it. And you're okay. You're safe here.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot more out of a friend to say, you know, I know you're sad.
Yeah.
What's another way of looking at this?
And it's so, and it goes back to what I said at the beginning, which is like, we're not all having the same experience, even when we are. I went out to, I would say, like my board of directors, you know, we don't call it that either, but we meet every Thursday, and we went out to dinner, and both of them were like, I don't think the waitress likes us. And I was like, really? I think that, and they're like, yeah, she seems kind of like, and I'm like, I think she seems like, I literally joked. I was like, if we had walked out of this restaurant right now, I would have been like, that waitress was joyful. Like we were literally, and we had the same interactions. And she brings us Swedish fish for dessert. And I was like, I'm going to ask her if I can have extra. They're like, no, she already doesn't like us. I'm like, I think she does. And so I'm like, hey, can I get a couple extra Swedish fish? And we have this whole interaction, me and her. Okay. Then she leaves. And then they were like, we basically had it, and we had just been talking about our thoughts and our reality. And they're like, you just did it, where you were assuming that she was open to us, and you acted from that place. And then she met you there. And now we all have extra Swedish fish when we were over here having an experience. And by the way, I'm on the other side of that too. That just happens to be a story where I'm having the positive perspective, but it was like, okay, this is a cool experience because we're all literally seeing the same thing, and we're all having a different inner experience.
Yeah.
What is reality? Nothing.
What is reality? Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was really cool because it was just a perfect, small, inconsequential example of
this exact
inner experience. Yeah.
The inner experience trumps the outer actions.
Exactly.
So that's it. This is the voice in our head. Why it matters. Chatter. Incredible recommendation. Chrissy.
I'm glad you loved it.
The voice in our head. Why it matters and how to harness
it.
Don't forget that part. That part's
it's important. That's the part we both like.
I actually just realized that that's what he's doing with the colors coming together.
He's bringing them in.
Genius.
I might put that on my here.
Chrissy, thank you so much.
I
for
just
this
so appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you. You are amazing.
Thank you. Likewise.
I have loved spending this time together. This chatter. No, wait, this is not chatter. But this chat.
This
chat has been amazing.
Yes, thank you so much.
And that's it for this episode of Books That Built Me. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. It really helps support what we're doing. Even a sentence is sufficient. Thanks for listening, and you can always find me on my LinkedIn at Char Banerjee. If you're dealing with a leadership challenge, I would love to hear from you and have you join our community. And of course, I will talk to you next Tuesday on a brand new episode of Books That Built Me.